non-savvy users, have suspended all the apps so they don't run in the background so that your user experience for longevity of the phone is relatively good. And so what they did do is they did put in 3 types of push notification. The first type of push notification is your live tile. That front page that has all the things that you care about the most in your life. You can update the tile itself by placing an image on the tile, putting a number on the tile, and giving it some type text. So if you write a stock ticker application that's watching some certain stocks and you've got a big mover in the stock, you can push down an icon that represents the company that you're watching, maybe a plus or minus saying, hey, this is a big jump, and some text here that maybe has the company name or something. So you as a developer can actually impact that front splash screen, which is your launch icon on that front screen. And there's an example. A new photo was published. 15 photos have been published. This was the latest one. This is the second type of push notification. If you're not on the front screen, if you happen to be in a, where did it go? If you happen to be in another app or looking at the phone in any particular way, come on. Maybe. There. You can push a push notification that has this type of notification, so if someone's actually looking at their phone, but they're not on that home screen, they will get a notification saying, hey, stock moved, and here's what it is. So you've got the tile, I pulled the phone out of my pocket, I opened it up, what's going on now, kind of that instant access, and my app is telling me there's something to go look at. There's also the I'm in an app, and I got a post from the top. And the last one is you can push notification right to your app. So if someone's actually using your app, you can do a push notification to your app to display new data or tell it to phone call and pull down the entire record or whatever the case may be. The live services, oh, there's an example. We added something new. Live services, here's an example of push notification. Basically, it has an idea of whether your app's in use. It has an idea of whether the phone is on or not. And so when you do a push notification, it'll do an attempt. It'll recommend it'll let you know what it thinks you can do, and then it'll try to do it. And there's no guarantee that it actually got there, though. This is not like an email message where it's stored forward. We try to do a push. If the record didn't get there, it's too bad. So you really want to use it more as a notification, not as data transfer. You want to do it so that your app knows you should run back and get a full record or something. If you're using it as an email-style queued up message, that's not going to work out so well for you. There's a variety of different ways you can do GPS. The 2 big ones, and there's a mix here that you can do. You can get triangulation off the towers. You can get actual GPS. That would drain your battery. That was more accurate. I don't think anyone here probably sees that as a surprise. You can also get Wi-Fi location. So if you have neither of those, but you're on a Wi-Fi network and the Wi-Fi network has been geocoded, you can get your location off the Wi-Fi network. I doubt that that's anything new to anyone here. So this is kind of going back to their point of, this is what your phone looks like when you open it up. This is what Windows Phone 7 looks like when you open it up. Information right at your fingertips on the things that you care about the most and the key things you care about the most. So there you go. That's Jeff's website, slipshot.net, and where you can go to get more toolkit stuff. So that's an overview of the platform. And we'll jump into some code here, but does anyone have any questions about the phone itself, my experience with the phone? Surely Microsoft has a long ways to go just to get into 3rd place, but
how's billing? Is it better than the market to Google checkout?
The billing?
Yeah, who's powering billing? Is it carrier-based billing?
No, Microsoft does all the billing. So when I buy an app, it just shows up Microsoft, 99 cents on my credit card bill. You can go through carrier too. I've never seen it bill show up on my carrier. I know that was supposed to be there. I don't know if it is or not. My bill's, you have it?
Yeah.
You have it. Correct. Yeah. It must be the way that I set up my billing then, because mine just always goes to my credit card.
So you have to so for what is the most common method is you create an account into your credit card.
Yeah. Now, some of the other things that are interesting, because the Windows Phone 7 does everything through the Zoom software. So you have all the Zoom capabilities that you have for HD video and music and everything on your phone. If you want to do all the Zoom Pass stuff for your PC, then the easiest thing to do is just set up a credit card, because then you can do all the Zoom music through your PC and through your phone, and it's all just in one.
Do they have in-app purchases?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. In fact, Android just announced that they're going to do that, right? They don't even have it today.
They said the developer APIs are going out now. They're not supporting it for, what is it, like July?
First quarter.
There are a lot of things we're expecting with this year with WinFlow 7. For how many people are familiar with Silverlight at all? Not much. Oh wow. Okay, good. So you guys know how fast Silverlight read. Every 6 to 9 months we saw it read until recently. Does anybody know why we stopped seeing the Silverlight read every 6 to 9 months? The Silverlight guys, I asked that, and the Silverlight guys said, "Dude, give us a break. We all got pulled off to work on WinFlow 7." So they actually did do another rev 6 to 9 months. It just happened to be on WinFlow 7. So what Microsoft has said is they've said, "You guys like how fast we move Silverlight?" Most of us said, "Yeah." Some of us said, "Are you kidding me? I can't keep up." But Microsoft has said, "We're going to rev WinFlow 7 faster than we rev Silverlight." So that's pretty impressive. So we have a lot of hopes that by this time next year, all the things that all the other carriers have and enjoy, like in-app purchasing and that, will be there, and probably some new things that the other carriers don't have. We already have some things the other carriers or platforms don't have, but hopefully we'll have even more. Supposedly the latest update for WinFlow 7 was pushed to the carriers last week. We should see that on the phones hopefully the next week or two. That'll have copy and paste, better search capability in the marketplace. Better tombstoning, faster tombstoning, so when you resume an app, it should be almost instantaneously, where now it's a couple of seconds. So they're changing some of the things around. They're obviously learning from the things that they've done and getting that in there faster. All right, so who wants to see some code? Anyone? Okay. So what I want to do tonight from a coding point of view is I want to show you how, if you're a .NET developer today, specifically if you're Silverlight or if you're comparing to Cisco, if you're Silverlight or WPF, I want to show you that you're also a Windows 7 developer. This is probably one of the most compelling points of view for the Windows Phone 7 compared to the other platforms, is that if you are Silverlight or WPF, you are a Windows Phone 7 developer. I'm hoping I can prove that to you tonight. So what I have up here is Visual Studio. I'm going to do my best to help you guys see what I'm doing here. And here's my project. This is the Silverlight project. Now this is where I started this morning at 9 o'clock when I said, man, I should probably put some code together for these folks. So I started this morning at 9 o'clock, and this is where I got at 9 o'clock with my Silverlight project. Thanks. Rip that out of the wall. And so when I started up the Silverlight project, I got some of these things in here by default. And the things that I didn't get by default was these two models. I have a base model here, which is all it does is implements iNotify property change. If you're not a .NET developer, don't worry about what that is. It's just a notification to the UI that something changed. I've got this tweak object here. Anybody want to guess that I'm doing a Twitter demo? Like every good demo does. I got this tweet object that only contains just these little bit of properties: username, my full name, status that I tweeted, the date it was tweeted, and the URL to my photo. That's all that is. Pretty basic stuff. There's not a lot of code. There's the base model. It's just throwing the events that something has changed. The about screen, error screen, home screen, these are all things that I got by default when I created my project. The home screen, I can show you what I did to modify the home screen on this UI. Pretty basic, bland, basic stuff. And all I did was add in this list box. That was all the code I wrote. Let me zoom in here. Put a list box in the UI, and the item source, the stuff that will fill in the list box, bind it to something called tweets. And we'll talk about the binding in this section. So that's all the changes I did to that. The final thing that I want to show you is this home view model. How many people are familiar with MVVM as a design pattern? Okay, so for the rest of the crowd, what MVVM is it's a design pattern that Silverlight made very popular. That you've got your view, your HTML, your Silverlight UI, your phone UI, whatever it is, and you've got your model, which is effectively the thing that came out of the database. Now, sometimes you can take what came out of the database and stick that right into your UI. A lot of times you can't. A lot of times you need to format the date. Sometimes you need to take a number and turn it into a word, take a number, turn it into text. And so what you do is you stick a view model in between that takes the data that was in the model and it makes it relevant to what the UI needs to draw properly, whether that's text formatting or changing the status into a color or whatever the case may be. It could also mean that you've got 6 or 7 models you pull out of the database and you stitch them all together into a single model to support the view. And that's basically what a view model is. And in this case, I have a view model that's acting somewhat like a controller as well. Let's see how well we can zoom in this one. It contains a web client. This is a requester that's going to talk over the internet. I call it Twitter because I'm going to talk to Twitter. It contains a list of tweet objects. We saw the tweet object before, so I'm just keeping a list of the tweets that's private. And then here's my public accessor. So get tweets, set tweets. This is notifying that tweets has changed. So when somebody puts a property into tweet, I'm going to notify that, hey, the tweet's property changed. And this goes back to binding, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then I've got this init routine. And all the init routine does is says, create a new list of tweets, create a web client, make a request, make a request. Let me scroll down a little bit. Here we go. Make a request. Here's where I'm making a request, and here's where I'm setting up how to handle it. Most people here would probably say, set up an event handler. I just made an anonymous event handler. This is a Lambda link structure that's new in .NET 3. It's a quicker, faster way. Some people might call it sloppy, but this is a quicker, faster way to do it. And you'll see that down here, I'm creating a request to Twitter. Go off to Twitter, go get all the status updates for a user, and my name is on the end there. Somebody can give me a better name so we don't have to look at my ugly mug every time tonight. But go off and get Scott K. Davis. And when you get it, I'm going to go through the XML and I'm going to tear out the screen name node that's inside the user node and stick it into my username, so on and so forth. Not a lot of magic there. I made a request, it gave me that XML, and I'm going to throw it into an object list. That's all the code. So what should happen when I run this serverless application is it should run out to Twitter. It should go find my last updates, I don't know how many, it be 20 or so, and display them on the screen in a list. And this is my list. Imagine my shock and frustration this morning when this didn't work and I'm coming here this afternoon to figure this out. Well, the reason why this doesn't work is because in Silverlight and Flash, when you call a service to one domain from another domain, that domain has to make it okay for you to call them for the cross-domain policy file. And Twitter removed theirs. They don't want to, they apparently can't handle the load the way it is, so they don't want Silverlight Flash clients calling Twitter. So I thought, all right, let's be agile. Let's shift. Let's build a WPF app. So Silverlight runs on the web, WPF runs on the desktop. So what we're going to do, lots of time, easy. Let's build a WPF app first. This is part of showing you how we're being a .NET developer and WPF, an example developer. So let's make a new project. And let's do a Windows project. We're going to do a WPF application. Let's call it Twitter WPF. I've already got one of them, so let's call this 2. And now let's start to cheat. So what we can do, go up to where that code lives. Here's my Twitter Silverlight app. Here it is. I want all my models. I want all my view models. There's only one view model. And I'm going to drag that into my WPF app. And there we go. I just copied in all my code from my Silverlight project. What I also want to do is I want to add a reference to a link to XML file so I can parse out my XML. So I'm going to go grab that right away. I don't want to already pretty much already compiled on it. So system.xml. And then in my UI, I want to do the exact same list box that I did before, so as any good developer will do, I will copy and paste. Nobody thought that was funny. That's the way we do development, isn't it? Copy paste, so I'm going to copy paste out the exact same list box definition, paste it right here, and then I have a little bit of initialization code going behind the screen, which I will also copy and paste. Create my view model, initialize it, bind it. So that goes to the code. Now let's find this out. Using statements, nice. Here we go. Now, did you see anything interesting about that? Is that my tweets? The reason why that's not my tweets is because I bound that list of tweets to my list box, and that's all I did. Now, what binding is in .NET Servlet WPF 1.7 is basically telling the UI to take whatever object I say is your context of your data and go look inside for the property I told you to look inside for and display that thing. And so the nice thing about that is that in programming that I did years before Servlet WPF existed, is in the back-end code, I would say textbox.text equals. Right? And you'd write the value. And then you'd say textbox.text equals, and you'd write the value. And what if you had to do a refresh? Then you would rerun all that code again saying textbox.text equals, and you'd have all this code that all it was doing was just setting UI values. And then you'd have code to pull values out of the UI values. And what binding does in XAML is that you just wire up through the framework saying this UI element gets its data from this data element. And you don't write any of that plumbing code anymore. And the data is automatically pushed back and forth with the .NET framework, and you avoid all that crap that we copy and paste and always screw up. And we have to do it twice, so we have to get it in and get it out. And so what we do with this binding is we basically give it a data object to our view, and then the view, we tell it how to go in and get the stuff out that we need for display. The difference here is that I've got a list, and I gave it an object. It's not going to know what to do with that object because it's just trying to stick the things in the list, so it just does a toString. Just says toString, which turns out to be the name of the object they put in there. So let's make this actually work. For anyone who knows Servlet WPF Blend, I'll bet you're asking yourself, why are you coding to use the design tools? Well, we'll get there. Oh, list box. List box, stop. I need to use my data type. So, does anybody want to watch me type this, or would you rather I went got it, copy and paste it? Let's see how you do it. I'll just go get it, and then I'll tell you what I did. So we'll go in from the project I did earlier today. We'll find it, we'll bring it in. Let's do it. So here's markup. For anyone who's not seen XAML before and but knows HTML, I think you probably will say, well, that makes sense. It's not HTML, but I get it. It's markup with one type or another. A grid is just a layout container, similar to a table, except for better than a table by a lot. A grid is basically just binary rows and columns. And you can span across rows and you can span across columns. I've got a grid defined here. And I've got the left column set up to be auto width with whatever's inside, and the right column with the star to be whatever's left over. And I've got my row definitions to both be auto. Just take up whatever space you need to put what's inside of it. The first UI element I have here is this image control. And you'll see the image control, I'm binding to something called image URL. I've got some text box here as well that these all go into the right column, top row, and I'm binding to something called full name. I'm putting a parenthesis in that sign, and then I'm putting my username and another parenthesis in that sign. And then I've got another text box that's binding to the status. Now, what this is all of these things that I'm binding to are the elements that were in that data object that I showed you earlier in Tweet. Binding to username, binding to full name, binding to status, binding to the image URL. So, one last thing I want to do here, I want to get rid of some of this format because that's yet to come. All right. So now that we've said bind to the list box, and then we told the list box how to display each item, normally what you'd see in a list box is a list of stuff. Now I've got my list box. This is still a list box, but each item displays the things that I told it to display in the format that I told it to display. Now you wouldn't be able to do this in the web, right? Because a list box on the web only has strings, a string value, or a value, and a display value, right? But in Silverlight, I can take any complex object and I can make it display any way that I want it to display as a list item. And in fact, if I put a mouse in here, I move my mouse in here, there's my list item. So this is kind of ugly, right? This is not very pleasing to the eye. Hard to see. My name's kind of important. I'd like that to be a little bit bigger. So let's go through there and see how that works. And maybe let's forget about making the name bigger and bolder, but let's get a little bit of space between our image and our text. So I'll just go with the image here and set some margin. We'll put a 10 margin that goes left, top, right, bottom. And we'll run it again. And now we've got a little bit of space between our picture and our text. Now, why did I keep the Silverlight project when I knew it was broken? Why did I go to this effort with the WPF? The reason why I did that is because Silverlight and WPF are two entirely different types of applications. One runs in a browser and is delivered via the web. One runs on your desktop and is delivered via floppy disk. Maybe we still have a floppy disk. I doubt that it even fit on a floppy disk anymore. But that's the point, is that it's two entirely different software packages, but we didn't change any code. The code that I copied and pasted in there was exactly the same code that ran in Silverlight. So now that should be exciting for the people that are web developers, desktop developers, and they've got this battle over which one should I do. Now suddenly if I start thinking about the world of XAML, maybe I don't care quite so much anymore. Here's something else I want to do. This is all well and good, but I kind of don't want my page to be in charge of this list. This list has got a lot of special logic. So I want this list to be its own control. So what I can do is I can go through the effort of making this a control, or I can bring up Blend. Now Blend is Microsoft's design tool, and when it comes up, it'll probably make you think more of Adobe's Illustrator than it will make you think of Visual Studio. But Blend gives us some things that we can do very quickly in terms of the UI. I'm not going to show you in any of my sample code how you make things look sexy, but this is where you make things look sexy. So I'm going to bring up this project I just did. As soon as it comes up, here we go. Open project. I'm going to open that project. We just the WPF project we just created. Here we go. WPF 2. I'm going to go into that UI. We only have that one UI. That's all we have. Okay. And I clicked 3 times. And there's my list box. There's my list box that I drew. If we want to look at the code, we can split screen. We can see that this is the list box. Now I can right click on this list box. And I can say, make this into a user controller. I'll ask me, what do you want to call it? Let's call it the tweet list. And now it strips that out and makes it into its own user control, and it's called tweet list right there. So there's my original window. We go back to the original window. Now all I have is just a link off to my control I just created, and that's it. Now tweet list can be used over and over and over again wherever I want it in my application if it's a reusable component. And that's all it took to take that one list and make it into a reusable component. So Now, here's where the exciting stuff happens. What the point of all of this stuff for the last 15 minutes has been. We want to make a Windows Phone 7 application. So I'm going to close Blend because right now, that's all I care about. Visual Studio recognizes that somebody else changed my file. I reload the project. Here's my tweet list. It automatically came in. And my UI has this new link in here referencing my user control. The integration between the design tools and development tools are really, really good. You change it one place, the other one recognizes it, you reload, and you can jump from one to the next very quickly and not step your toe. So here's the exciting part. Here's what I want to show you. This will run into a story about Conquer. We're going to start up another version of Visual Studio. I'm running Visual Studio Professional. When I downloaded the Windows Phone 7 development tools, it recognized that I already had Visual Studio, so it put the components into my Professional edition. If I didn't have Visual Studio, it would have installed the Express version of Visual Studio with the development tools, the free version. So what I want to do now is I want to do a new project. I want to do, this time, a Silverlight for Windows Phone project. I'm going to build a very basic phone application here. Let's call it Twitter and Phone 7 to Larry. And now I have my Windows Phone 7 project. And I have some pretty basic stuff in here. I've got my main screen, just like I had a main screen in my Windows project. There's my main screen. Now, what I want to do here is I can do the exact same thing I did before with the Silverlight to WPF. I can just copy in all the files, and I can do pretty much the exact same thing. But I'm going to do something a little bit different. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a new folder. I'm going to call it models. I'm going to add another new folder called new models. New models. And I'm going to go get my models file, but this time I'm going to add them existing. Select them. I'm going to hit this little arrow here. Does anybody know what this is? How many people know what this is? This arrow on the add button. I'm going to add these as a link. I'm not actually copying the files. They stay right where they're at. I'm sharing them with my WPF project. And you'll see that I get a little shortcut icon on those guys. So I'll zoom in on that. Let me add the other file that we care about. Go to an existing item. I'm going to go get the home view model. I'm going to add that one as a link. And then I'm going to also go get that user control. I built that list user control. Let's go get that. Here's my list. I get both of those. I'm going to add both of those as a link. So, see how I get the little shortcut icons? That tells me that that file is not actually in my project. I'm linking to that source code file that lives someplace else. It's not actually in this folder structure. Here's where things get interesting. I'm in my UI for my main page, and I've got this content area here, content panel. So let's go add, actually, let's even do it this way. Rather than coding it, I'll just go to my toolbox. Okay, build failed. Oh, this is that reference to the XML link library. Add that in here. Link. Now we can actually process our Twitter tweets. Build again. Success. Look at the toolbox. Oh, there we go. Get user control. I'll drag that baby in there, right there. It thinks it's super tiny. Super tiny. I will reset the layout, reset everything. No margins. Take up all the space. There's my list. You see right here that I've got this reference out to the tweet list. There it is, tweet list. Now let's run. So it starts up the Windows Phone emulator. This emulator will take a few seconds to load. This is actually running the real operating system. It thinks it's a phone. disabled, there's a registry hack you can get it, but it disabled the dialer because obviously you're not going to be able to dial. But there's a registry hack that you can do to get the phone to act like the phone. It's launching my app, page name. If we're lucky, oh, we forgot to call it init, right? That was the 3 lines of code that we didn't paste in the last project into the code behind. So let's go into the code behind. So when the application launches, go into the code for this UI. There we go. It's going to call initialize component. I need to go off and I can go back to my WPF app, go into the initialize code, need to create my model, tell it to init. There we go. Let me try to work. Thanks. All right. Include my namespace. Oh, shoot, you need to see it load. But there we go. Do you want to see it load again? Let's see it load again. Be more prepared this time. And there it is. So I got the zoom set pretty high on this. Probably works best to have the zoom set high so everyone can see it. Crank it down a touch. So there we go. How much code did we change from our WPF and our Silverlight and our WinPhone7? Right? If you guys are .NET developers that know XAML, you are WinPhone7 developers. It's really just that easy. But here's the exciting part. As if that wasn't exciting enough. Remember I said I didn't like the fact my name was so small? That's just the way I am. So if I go into this tweet list here, into the UI, and I decide I really want this name to be bigger, so let's go full name, that's what we want. Font size, let's make this font size 40. Even better yet, let's bold it, because that's awesome. Now, this is in WPF. Running WPF. Okay, while that's running, let's go back and we'll run this in the WinPhone7 as well. Where did my app launch go? There it is. There it is. There's my WPF app. Looks pretty good. And because that code file is shared, as it is shared, it did not run. There we go. Sharing code across projects. That's pretty cool. I mean, think about it in your enterprise. Think about it in your company. How much .NET code you already have. How many things do you have that are lists, that are text boxes, that are buttons, that do stuff that are specific to your app and your enterprise? And how easy is that now to get that on one side? If you think about this from the point of view of the enterprise, there's a lot of really cool stuff here. I know that the first release for WinPhone7 is really targeted to the consumer. We do a lot of things on the phone that's sexy, it's exciting, and it's all Facebook, 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 because we really want adoption to drive. But when we start thinking about the phone being an extension of your PC, and your administrators being able to manage your phone the same way they manage your PCs for software updates and patches and deployments and all that stuff, and pushing UI, which probably will be there by the end of the year. We can have, I'm guessing, I don't know any inside information, I'm guessing it won't be long before we see private marketplaces for the enterprises, so that your sales people and your customer support people and your field people can get the apps to their phone through your enterprise. This is going to change the game a lot when we talk about leveraging the software that we've already built for enterprise, and now it's on mobile.
And you can run WPF apps through the browser, like you can basically set up as a hosted app.
If you want to do this so you could do a one-click install for WPF. You can do it that way. But if you've got a WPF app and it's not doing 3D, which 3D will be there in Silverlight 5 actually. But if you're not doing 3D and you're not doing, there are very few things that Silverlight can't do anymore. You probably want to evaluate whether it makes the most sense to migrate the WPFF to Silverlight versus trying to figure out those deployment issues. That's really the biggest question. We can now print through Silverlight. The last release of Silverlight gave us printing capability, gave us webcam capability, gave us access to all the things that are on the PC. Silverlight 5 is adding more things to that we need, the real software, as well as the really cool stuff like 3D rendering and stuff like that. By the way, this is a touch capacitive PC, so in the emulator, I can do this drilling with my finger. If I was using pinch and zoom, I can practice that on the laptop. So the emulator supports 4-point capacitive touch too. If your laptop supports it, you can do those types of things. Okay, so that's really what I wanted to show you tonight from a point of view of the coach here. And so there were 3 things I was going to cover tonight. One was what is the platform, the second one is how cool is it to be a .NET developer now, and the third thing is to talk about Conquer. So, let me talk about Conquer. So, when we started off, we said I was part of a team that won Startup Weekend the first weekend, and let me tell you a little bit about what this thing was. Justin Peck is one of my partners, as well as Andy Beckett and Jesse Belief. And the 4 of us participated with another team member, Michael Maddox. The 5 of us participated in this thing called Startup Weekend. So what Startup Weekend is you get together on a Friday night, about 7 o'clock, get the beer going, and then anybody that wants to can stand up at 7:30, 8 o'clock and say, I think we should build a business that does this. I got the best business idea ever. Here it is. You get 60 seconds and then kick you off the stage. I mean, you get 60 seconds to convince the audience you've got a good business idea. And then the audience votes for the best ideas. And at the first Startup Weekend, they did 15. The second one, they did 10. So 15 people with the best ideas lined up around the outside of the room, the ones that got the best votes. The people that had the best ideas had 20 minutes to build a team from everybody else that was left over. So you had 100 people broken up into 15 teams. And actually, some people didn't get anybody to come participate. They voted for my idea, but nobody wanted to play with me. And so we didn't actually have 15 teams in the end. But Justin's idea was Conquer. And he made up the name while he was standing in line, Q-O-N-Q-R. I got my Conquer shirt on today, I think. I do. So they're Conquer. So Q-O-N-Q-R. And it is a mobile social game of world domination. The idea is that, like Foursquare, you go to a physical location and you check in. Except for you don't check in when you play Conquer, you deploy nanobots. You can't see them because they're nanobots, but you deploy these nanobots into this place that you're at, into a geography. Whoever deploys the most nanobots into a zip code, which is how we're doing it right now, controls the zip code. When you sign up for Conquer, you get assigned to 1 of 3 teams: Tango, Whiskey, and Foxtrot. Whiskey, Tango, Foxtrot. Okay, so WTF, Whiskey, Tango, Foxtrot, which is the gold team, the green team, and the silver team. And so if you're on the Tango team and you deploy into a zip code, and the Foxtrot team was holding that zip code and your deployment took over that zone, then the Tango team now owns the zone. You get your name up as the conqueror, Q-O-N-Q-R-er, of the zone, and we show how long your team has held the zone. We do it by zip code. If your team owns the most zip codes in a region, you own the region. If you own the most regions in a state, you own the state, states, countries, so on and so forth. And so that's how Conquer played and worked. So Justin's idea was selected. Justin called me the Wednesday before the Friday and said, I got this idea, I'd like to run it by you. I'm thinking about pitching it to Startup Weekend, what do you think? And I said, not my thing. I'm sure you'll get voted. It sounds very good, right? But yeah, I have my own idea that I think I want to do. So my idea didn't get selected, Justin's did, and I was a little disappointed, so I thought, I'm just going to work on my idea anyway. Because that's fair. If you get something done on your own, you can still present it to me even if you weren't selected. But I knew Justin would need a lot of mapping, and I have a lot of mapping experience. So I went up to him and he was standing by himself. Nobody's coming over to be on Justin's team. And I said, look, I know you're going to need a lot of mapping. I know all about this stuff. I'll do your mapping for you, but I'll probably spend most of my time working on my other stuff. He said, all right, that's cool. And then the 2 guys that run the .NET user group came over to Justin and said, hey, we'll be on your team. Justin used to help run the .NET user group, and I run the Silverlight user group. So basically, it was the Microsoft guys. It was the Microsoft guys, and then all the Ruby and the PHP and everybody else, the iPhone folks are off doing their own thing. And so I went home. It was midnight. I was tired. I went to bed. I got up, and then I couldn't sleep very well because I had all these things running through my head about the mapping and what if we did this and this would be kind of cool. And so I ended up getting up at 5 o'clock and I started doing some prototype code. Those guys went back to Jesse's house and they stayed up until 6, working on doing this. They bought hosting, they set up an SVN repository, they started doing some investigation on some of the things that they have to do for where do we get zip codes. So we come back together, doors open at 8 o'clock back at the facility, and I said, I've got all these great ideas. I found out that you don't have to pay licensing for mapping if you do it on the phone. You have to pay licensing for mapping if you do it on the web, but it's free on the phone. So this is actually could maybe work because it won't cost us a fortune, $10,000 to get a Google Map license or the equivalent to get a Bing Map license if we do it on the phone. And those guys, of course, were all crazy and said, we haven't slept. And slept an hour maybe. And we've got all this stuff going. And so we busted it out Saturday, worked really hard. We left the house, went back home. We were online until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I slept 2 hours the second night. They slept another hour. And so we came back and rolled it all together, and we pitched on Sunday at 5 o'clock. We were the only team that had a product that had a database, a website, web services, and a mobile app. And so a big part of why we won is how far we had gotten. But it was also kind of the buzz that got generated. We had an iPhone app that when we got out there, we got 3 minutes to show the result. I think it was 3, maybe it was 5. And we told everybody, before we say anything, go to Conquer.com and go launch the game on your iPhones. And I think some of the Androids support WebKit, so they could play too, because it was a web version of the game. It wasn't a native iPhone app. And so they could launch the game. And while they launched the game, we said, sign in with your Twitter ID, there's no password. We already signed you to a team, start deploying. And so these people are mashing the deploy buttons as fast as they can to try to take over the zip code we were all in. And then while they were mashing the buttons, we brought up the command center. Everybody look at the screen. Thank you. This is written in Silverlight with big maps. And so we brought up the command center, and then we brought up a pin that is updating every 10 seconds. I think that's Minneapolis, but here we'll just show you one of the pins. It's updating every 10 seconds, and the bars started going like this. They were deploying nanobots into the zip code, and we were seeing things happen live. And the crowd was getting kind of rowdy, which helped us a lot with the judges because there was a lot of excitement. And so this is what we built, and this is what we demoed in the application. Now, some of these are accurate dates, some of them are not. We've got some buggy code. We actually had to, one of the members ended up leaving the team, and so we had to pull all his code out because we didn't want to violate his IP, which created a few bugs that we haven't fixed yet, but we don't really care, quite frankly. We've been doing a lot of development, and none of it's public yet, so for the most part, this still runs the way it ran from the first start of the weekend. That's pretty much the same way. It also makes a really cool demo because this, like the WinPhone 7 app, is Silverlight, so it's got a lot of animation, the pinch and zoom all works. We have proof that we're viral because this is, whoop, too far. We don't have the state level done yet. But, whoop, there, zoom, out. I'm touching the wrong thing too fast. Out. I didn't go one more level before it disappears. So these are the people that have deployed ConquerBots, and we don't have any advertising, we don't have anything. This is just word of mouth. We thought that was pretty cool. Then we looked in the database and realized we've had deployments in 12 different states, including California, Texas, Florida, New York. Well, there's one in downtown Manhattan. I don't know. So this is our game, this is our idea. We got this, the command center is written in Silverlight because we needed something sexy and that worked really fast with great animation. The problem is it doesn't run on the iPad. And so we recognize that, and we'll have to come up with a different solution. But there's a huge problem. Google Apps, which is the most obvious selection for building a website that will run on the iPad, has a gigantic memory. It will run the iPad in memory in 30 minutes. And so the pins on Google Apps do not garbage collect. And so with updating these pins so frequently, we'll run the iPad out of memory. In fact, I tweeted this over Christmas, the NORAD Santa Tracker. Did anybody go out and look at the NORAD Santa Tracker? That's a Google Maps implementation. I brought that up to see the implementation. Oh, that's kind of neat. And I forgot to close it. I came back 45 minutes later, and my browser was at 1.8 gigs of RAM. And so that's an example of the problem we have to deal with. We all hope, of course, that we can get a mono version that we can run, or something that we can run on the iPad sometime this year, and we don't have to do a complete rewrite of our command center. We're also working now on trying to get an iOS data app as well, which is probably the easiest thing to do. So we can run Silverlight everywhere else, and we'll do native apps on the iOS and Win17 platform. So I'll show you what we have on Win17, and I'll tell you another interesting story about using Drupal code. So if I bring up, let's just pick up this guy here. We'll close this solution. Should be in the recent list. Conquer Win17. Okay. There's the Conquer app. Oh, I didn't show you changing the phone sideways on the app that we built for a test app. We do that. It's literally about 15 characters of code orientations and it automatically switches phones. So there's Conquer on the Win17 emulator. I also have it running on my phone here. There's the device. If I click on zoom in, we'll see the same stuff. We'll touch, bring it up. It's the exact same code. Now here's the interesting thing, and this is why I was asked to speak at the Win17 launch event. I spoke at the keynote. I did all the Silverlight work for Startup Weekend, and we figured we put in about 27 hours of Silverlight work. The rest was web services and database and all the other jazz that goes along with building an application. 27 hours of Silverlight work to make this work. Now, in fact, we heard afterwards that the judges said they walked in the door with something. There's no way they built that in 27 hours, in 48 hours. And that's all it took. To do this level of UI and interaction and all the web services, it took 5 of us that much time. And it has a lot to do with the fact that the animations and the UI and the binding just removed so much code in Silverlight, and they're so easy to do with the design tools that we got that far that fast. But, so being that it was in Silverlight to begin with, gives you a lot of advantages. But here's the interesting part that got me selected to speak at the keynote. So here's Conquer running on the phone. Come on, go away. Same thing. Zoom in one level. It's all there. Took 1 hour to get it off the web and on the phone. First time we tried. And all of the mapping components are different because the map component for the Win17 is a different component than runs on the web. So that's pretty cool. To build an app that you built for the web, never planning for it to be on Win17, and to be able to get it to Win17 that fast, speaks a lot to the power of the platform for the developer. One of the things I want to point out here, this is the Conquer Win17 application. I don't know if you guys can see that when we zoom in. Look how many of these files are native to the project and how many of them are shared. Shared, 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 shared. And that's probably, there's like a GPS helper in there. We don't have any need for a GPS helper or a storage helper on the app that's on the web. That's for tombstoning. These are even have more shared files right there. The reuse across Silverlight and Win17 and WPF is just tremendous. It was unexpected. And even the Microsoft guys at the conference were surprised how much sharing that we had. Now there's 2 different ways you can do sharing. One of them is to do these linked files, and the other one is to build a common project. And you just associate that DLL into both your apps. The common project way, in retrospect, would probably have been the better way to do this. I found that I stubbed my toe a lot where I accidentally put in a phone component, and then my web component broke. So if I would have taken out the common stuff and I would have just made that in a common library that had no phone components included at all, that would have been a lot easier, I think, to avoid some of those break issues. Something else that I'd like to show, because it shows that I graduated from being just a nerd to somebody who can build half a decent UI, is the deployment screen. There's our deployment screen. Looks kind of sexy, but this is awesome. That's a button. I mean, that's a button. And that was all done with Blend, some of the Blend tools. In fact, I can show you some of the Blend tools and how they work for managing the animations if you're interested. There's no code code, like what we think of as code. It's all markup to do animations in sort of like the PF 1.7. And so if we bring out, where's the lid? Ooh, the lid is, I can't find it. It's called button layer, launch layer, something like that. That's just a button, I think. I didn't do a very good job of naming my controller. Well, let's try it. We're going to open this in Blend. So even in Visual Studio, I can just right-click on the file in Visual Studio and say Launch Blend. That's how we get it. But I'm pretty sure that this is just a button. By the way, the button, this button, is not what you think of as a button. It's a circle and an oval, and it's got shading, gradients, and shadows and all this stuff. But you can right-click on it and say, make this whole thing into a button, and now suddenly it has click events. It has enabled events and disable events. And so the nice thing about this tool from an interactive point of view is you can draw whatever you want and then say, make this a button, or make this a list box, or make this a top button, a radio button. So, yeah, that wasn't what I was looking for. Oh, there, button lid. So there's my button lid. I'm going to figure out if I can come in and use the storyboards. So if I look at the states, I've got an open state, and I can play my timeline and see how that goes. And each one of these little circles, these tiny little microscopic circles down here, represents a change in the UI. So if I drag this, I can see that I'm doing the transition of making the button look like it's going down by scaling and pushing and clipping. I've also got this shadow thing that it's got a little bit of overlap, and you can see some of the dark lines up in the corner where it's a little bit too overlap. At the speed I run it at, it really can't tell. Then I've got a rectangle that just slides out from behind. It's clipped. It's got shading and stuff. And so this is how you set up your animations, and then all you have to do is tell your button to go to the open state or go to the closed state. And Blend figures out how to get it from point A to point B forward. If you don't write code, you don't write animated code, you write markup saying, at 1/10 of a second, you should be here. At 2/10 of a second, you should be here. Visual Studio and Blend figure out how to make that happen. You don't write the easy code to do that. You just say, here's where I want to go, and then you can select, in this case, I don't want to, but in this case, you can select an easing function, elasticity, and it'll do the bounce for you. You didn't have to write the bounce, you just said bounce. So that's the story of Conquer. Conquer 1.7, sort of like made for pretty sexy demo. Now I know I didn't show much with the phone. I tried to set up a webcam so I could do stuff on the phone and you can see it. But feel free to come up here and follow my phone if you want. It's really responsive, pretty neat UI. If you haven't seen it before, you can see the tiles. For example, I've got, there's my wife and my mom and my sister. You'll see their tiles will kind of slide up and down. If one of them has made a Facebook post recently, they'll flip over and show you or show you a photo. I'm guessing none of them have. I'm really hoping we get Twitter integration because I follow people on Twitter much more than I follow them on Facebook. And so I'm hoping that comes next. The photos gallery here is a panoramic control. You can see the photos of my panoramic control. And if I look at all my photos, these are photos that are on my camera that I've taken on my camera, which have automatically been backed up to SkyDrive. All of these albums are off Facebook. Automatically integrated down to my phone. All I do is hook up my Facebook account and I run all my albums down. So I can go here and say, oh yeah, remember that time a kid and I went to Boy Scout camp? You want to see some photos? There's are some photos of me and my kid at Boy Scout camp, and it's feeding them all right off of Facebook. And so that's an example of some of the other integration stuff that Windows has. So with that, I think we're supposed to be done at 8. I'm done a little early. Thoughts, Q&A, yeah.
So if you have Windows 3 2010 Ultimate, is there any other things you need in order to do Windows 7?
Yeah.
Windows 1.7 development?
Yeah, we got all the Windows 7 SDK. It's free, but you gotta go install it. It wasn't released at the time that 2010 was released, so you gotta install it. I'm sure it'll be there first level citizen next time around.
Is VP supported with Windows 7?
Yeah, but not for XNA. If you do XNA development, you have to do C#. If you do Silverlight, it's VB is just fine. I guess there's rumor
I
mill.
don't see any options there that it hasn't project.
Oh, I'm gonna make you a liar. C# only, but it's coming. I know that there's talk of VB. I thought that was VB for XNA, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's VB for Silverlight wasn't there. Who's VB anyway? No, let's see. I don't make me a liar, but that's okay. We'll see. You very well could be right. C#. Oh, that's C#. Let's look and see if there's a VB Windows 1.7.
I think it was a CTP.
What's that?
I think there's only been a CTP for it so far.
Did it? Oh, here, Visual Basic? Ah. But, now the interesting thing with there would be, could you leverage your VB.NET libraries because they're already compiled down to the IL? I would say, yeah, why not? So if you already have VB.NET code in your enterprise, and really all you have to do is the markup and the wiring, that's not terrible, but I think you're right. I think VB will be there shortly, probably the next service pack. There are a lot of ones about it for sure. Sorry, my mistake. You're right. No VB yet.
Is it tiles on your homepage?
Mm-hmm.
Are they per person, per application?
Oh, yeah. In fact, you can do a variety. You can do per application. So I go in here and say, let's say, for example, I get this Morpho app. That's kind of funny. So I can just hold it down, and it says, what do you want to do? Append to the start menu, uninstall it, or rate and review it. So the rate and review goes back to the marketplace. So you can append that right to the start menu. But also, let's say I go into Office, and I find an Excel file that I've been working on. I can append the Excel file right to the start menu. So if I keep my time card in Excel or a Word document or something like that, and I'm constantly digging through the menu to find it, I can append that right to my start screen, so I can just unlock the phone, bam, it's up and running. So that's kind of the point of what's most important to me, getting on the front screen. The other thing that the phone has is that from anywhere, if you hold down the camera button, you're in the camera. You're right there in the camera. And even if you take the phone out of your pocket and the lock screen is locked, you hit the camera button, hold it down for 3 seconds, you're in the camera. What a lot of the demos that you see Microsoft do is they'll take the phone out of their pocket, they'll launch it, they'll take a photo, and it'll be on Facebook in 4 seconds. Because they've got it auto-uploaded to Facebook and everything. So it's kind of the, that's how they're selling it to the soccer moms, right? You ever see your kid do something and you could get your phone out of your pocket, get a snap quick enough? This is the fastest phone out of your pocket on Facebook phone there is. It's gimmicky, but it actually does sell.
How does it work for business purposes compared to the iPhone and the Droid?
Well, I can't compare it to the iPhone and the Droid because I don't know, but I can tell you that you have full Office, full Excel, full PowerPoint, all of that stuff. I suspect by the end of the year, Rick Cities with HDMI outs, so you'll be able to run your presentation right off your phone because you'll have everything you need to run a presentation, whether that's Excel or PowerPoint. It has OneNote, so the OneNote syncs through your SkyDrive down to your PC, so if you do a lot of OneNoting, then you can do that. I believe there's an Evernote either on the phone already or coming that will do a similar thing. I think that the interesting thing a lot of people predict is that, and I've said this dozens of times, Windows will fight for a minimum of 2 years just to get in third place. And the one they're going to beat is going to be BlackBerry. And a lot of it's going to have to do with the fact that how many people do you know, and I bet you know, that carry their BlackBerry because they have to, and they carry their iPhone, or they carry their Android. They want to use their iPhone and their Android. They have to carry their BlackBerry. The Windows Phone is going to be the moderate kind of thing. Not this extreme, not that extreme. It's going to be the phone you can play your Xbox Live games on, and you can do all your Facebooking on, you can follow people on Twitter on, and you have full integration into your Exchange, to SharePoint, your document shares, and all of that stuff. And I'm expecting within a year, you'll also have full corporate management so that you can deploy updates to your business apps themselves without going to the Windows Marketplace. Just speculation on my part, but Windows has always won in the corporate market. They'd be a fool not to go after that and take over BlackBerry and try to make some penetration into the other two platforms. I really don't see iPhone users going to this phone. They get too much invested in their phone, both monetarily, but also from a branding perspective, right? They identify with the phone, it's part of who they are. Microsoft's not going to win against Apple. They shouldn't even try. I mean, they can try to be different, and I'm not saying they should give up. They should try to be different, try to be better, but realistically, they're not going to capture much of the Apple market. I think there's a possibility they could capture some of the Android market. I think a lot of that will have to do with some frustration with the way apps kind of can do whatever they want, and it creates a negative user experience, kind of like what I talked about with the battery life. There's some of that. I think we're going to see a lot more vindictive apps on the Android platform. We've seen some of them already with stealing contact info and things like that, because there's no validation of is this a safe app or not, like you have with Apple and Windows. So that could cause some people to move. I definitely think that will cause corporations, to move off of Android and onto either the iPhone or the Windows Phone if they're already adopting the Android platform, because it's a little bit tougher to secure it on that phone. So, but realistically, they've got a long way to go, and it's not going to be a Connect like overnight success. I mean, we have too much invested in our phones to move quickly. So, but Microsoft, I think, is doing the right things to capture the market that's available to be captured, and they're doing it through good business integration and the Xbox and other things like that.
We got a lot of cash, so.
And they have a lot of cash. Yeah, I think they can push it forever. If you guys watch any type of primetime TV, you're probably seeing Windows phones. iPhones, I think I've seen the Windows Phone on phones a dozen times. It's on that TV show a lot, and I've seen it on other shows as well. Commercials everywhere. The App Stores, only has 6,000 apps, but it's only been out for 3 months. That's pretty darn good. And .NET is one of the largest, perhaps even the largest development language in use today in the world. And so Microsoft has the advantage of, if you are a .NET developer, you are a WinPhone 7 developer. There's very little to learn. So there's opportunity there for them to get third place this year, maybe next year for sure, I think. And who knows after that.
I think one of the advantages of BlackBerry that's attractive to the enterprise is the encryption. So
Yeah,
what's
security.
What's the Windows Phone 7 story on that? I ran across the story. I didn't read it.
From a developer's point of view, you decide how secure your data is on the phone, whether you store that encrypted in your storage space or in clear text in the storage space. But applications only get access to their sandbox. They cannot reach out to the phone and get access to any other files. If you want to get a photo that you took with the camera, the user gets prompted saying, this app wants access to the photos. And you don't get, the application does not get a directory. They get a stream of files. And all they can just do is read those files one at a time and look through them. So your apps are super, super sandboxed. It's Silverlight. Silverlight in the browser is sandboxed, right? And so they took that exact same model to the phone, and they sandboxed all the apps. So there's always the risk that a hacker will find a workaround, right? And that's the problem on every platform. But it's not like the Android platform where you can kind of reach out and touch anything you want. That's definitely not the case in the Windows Phone. It's much, much more secure than that.
I should give you an idea of the games market. So I was at Home Games Toronto this week. So the CEO, Linus, had the Doodle Jump. It's been cross-platform published onto the Game House.
Yep.
He said all the revenues on every other platform don't add up to what he's making on iPhone yet. The top game developers on iPhone are making $1 million per title on the top titles. And on BlackBerry, some of the most anyone's earning on BlackBerry on their top game is $5,000.
The most.
Yeah,
It's 5,000 a month.
So iPhone gaming developers are, it's just that's where the action is. People didn't even want to hear about Android in London. I think Android with Q1 payment improvements and the market share they have is going to grow pretty fast. But right now it's all on iPhone for revenue for games.
Some of the things I've heard about, I mean, clearly, I mean, I'm not up here to tell you that Microsoft's going to win, because I don't think they are. I think they're going to capture market, but I don't think they're going to win. And, you know, I don't think they deserve it, because Apple was there first, and they deserve what they have. But one of the things I've heard from some Android developers is that there's frustration growing in the Android marketplace, because apparently, if you jailbreak your Android phone, and I guess a lot of people do, that you can buy an app and then demand a refund, but then keep the app running on the Android. So a lot of Android developers don't want to buy apps, period, because it's an open source platform, right? I want stuff for free, it's open source, that's why I pick the platform. Why should I pay for stuff? But then those that are savvy enough to jailbreak their phones are actually stealing software, because if you jailbreak your phone, you can download the app and bypass the security and run the app for free. So I guess the revenues out of the Android store, if you're not doing ad-based revenue or in-game-based revenue, you're not going to make money in the Android store, is the story that I'm hearing from developers. You know, but
That makes sense because Doodle Jump it's a paid-to-play game, so you know, and you wouldn't think on Android
Yeah.
or other places it would do well.
That was all on paid revenues.
Yeah.
For Doodle Jump, he doesn't do any ads yet.
yeah, I think that's a tough place to live. I mean, I know some Android developers, and their frustration is they're usually doing both iPhone and Android, and a lot of them are reaching a frustration point where the buzz is there. Android is phenomenal growth, they've taken over top spot, this and that, but they're having trouble making money. It doesn't matter how many phones there are, the people that use the phones won't pay for stuff, right? And I don't know if it's a cultural thing or if it's a hacker mentality or what it is, but clearly the place to play if you want to make money right now is in the iOS.
Maybe Google's revenue model, that says a lot.
But does Google have any incentive to change? I mean, they don't have any incentive to change that, right? And there really isn't. I called, when we were in Chicago, there was a person there from Microsoft and a person there for Google. And the guys from Google, of course, I'm trying to make friends with the Microsoft guys, so I'm being an antagonist. But the guy from Google was saying about how wonderful the Android platform was. And I said, I've talked to some Android developers, and they're building apps for 3 and 4 versions back.